everyone. A very good afternoon. I, Ashish Kumar Dubey, Manager Medical Excellence, AstraZeneca, would like to welcome you all to Pharmasteer 2026. Pharmasteer 2026 is envisioned to be a transformative milestone in the pharmaceutical industry, highlighting latest advancements and critical breakthroughs set to redefine healthcare spectrum. With the involvement of esteemed AZ internal experts, thought leaders, and faculty from CGS Medical College and KEM Hospital, Mumbai, this event will deliver profound insights, impactful addresses, and engaging dialogues. Pharma Year 2026 is going to be a great learning experience for the students. With that short context, let us not keep you and all our dignitaries waiting. Let's have a huge round of applause and welcome our dignitaries from AstraZeneca and CHES Medical College and KEM Hospital, Mumbai on stage. Nirav, can we have curtain opening video? AstraZeneca. Dr. Shashank Srinivasan, Medical Director for Oncology Business Unit, AstraZeneca. Dr. Viraj Rajadhyaksh, Lung Regional Franchise Head, International Markets, AstraZeneca. Dr. Sandhya Kamath, Professor and Head, Department of Pharmacology and Therapeutics, HGS Medical College and KEM Hospital, Mumbai. Dr. Padmaja Marathe, Professor Additional, Department of Pharmacology and Therapeutics, HGS Medical College and KEM Hospital, Mumbai. And Dr. Yashashri Shetty, Professor Additional, Department of Pharmacology and Therapeutics, CHGS Medical College and KEM Hospital, Mumbai. Can we now have the lamp lighting ceremony? Lamp lighting symbolizes arrival of light, signifying the triumph of knowledge over ignorance, invoking sense of auspiciousness and purity as it marks the beginning of this meaningful event. All right. May I now invite Dr. Viraj onto the stage to recite Saraswati Vandana. Sir, over to you.
Thank you, Ashish. This is a temple of knowledge, and let us bow before Ma Saraswati in line with our tradition that we have in India as well as in our department. Let us pray to Goddess Saraswati so that our quest of knowledge continues and we become better people and better citizens. Let us say the Saraswati Vandana. या कुन्देन तुषारहा धवला या शुभ्रवस्त्रामृता या वीणावरदण्डमण्डितकरा या श्वेतपद्मासना या ब्रह्मा शुकशङ्करा प्रभुदेवै देवै सदा वन्दिता सा मा पातु सरस्वती भगवती निशेषजाड्यापहा. Let us bow before Goddess Saraswati and pray to her so that our quest of knowledge continues and we become better professionals. Thank you and do enjoy the program. Over to you, Ashish.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Viraj, for gracing the inauguration with your eloquent rendition of Saraswati Vandana. Your divine invocation added a profound touch illuminating our event with wisdom and positivity. With that, let me now invite Dr. Sandeep Arora, Medical Director, Biopharmaceutical and Rare Diseases Units, AstraZeneca, on stage. Dr. Sandeep, a pharmaceutical physician and a great leader serving as medical director with over 15 years of leadership spanning multiple domains. He has led national and regional medical organizations, built end-to-end medical affairs functions, and driven cross-functional strategy, cross-clinical development, evidence generation, access, and patient services. His work includes steering launch excellence and life cycle management across diverse therapy areas, establishing robust medical governance and compliance frameworks. With that, please join me in welcoming Dr. Sandeep on stage. Sir, over to you.
First of all, thank you, Ashish, for setting up this entire platform for our young medical professionals. And I would like to first welcome our esteemed faculties from SATE, GSMC, KEM at hospital. Sorry, I'm just like, if I'm able to pronounce it correctly, but welcome Dr. Sandhya, Dr. Yashasri, Dr. Padmaja. It's a very honor for us to partner with you on this occasion to help understand our medical professionals the journey ahead in pharmaceutical industry, what the career opportunities like, and where do they can learn and really develop as medical affairs professionals, or if their interest areas are in clinical trials, pharmacovigilance, regulatory affairs. The scope is really wide these days. I still remember, and in fact, I can tell a story here. Is When I joined industry, it was 2007-8, right? And it was an accidental joining, to be honest. My friend just called me and he said that, there are no night duties in pharma industry. So why can't you just kind of come in and have a good quality of life? So as a young medic, I just kind of moved into a Indian company, which was Ranbaxy, during those days. Now it's Sun Pharmaceutical. So I worked yeah. So I first joined a organization called Ranbaxy. They had a very swanky office in Gurugram, which is one of the first, I would say, Indian multinational. And I was mesmerized by their corporate culture. And I worked there for 9 months, and I met my boss, Dr. Porus Irani, right? And he kind of helped me, gain strength and also gain inroads into how pharmaceutical industry works. Because once you are a clinician and you are shifting to a pharma world, it's a very different world altogether. And then, after Ranbaxy, I moved into AstraZeneca. And in fact, Dr. Porus took me along, to be honest. And I moved from Delhi to Bangalore. So that's how I kind of built my career in pharmaceutical. But that was by chance. But now what I see in young enthusiasts and most of the pharmacology students or in other clinical branches, they want to join pharma industry by design. And that's a mindset shift which has happened, in last few years. Uh, Kudos to our innovation in research and development, and also in expansion by the Indian multinational companies as well. The role of medical affairs has evolved from just the training the reps to now really looking at partnering with the business on the launch of the new molecules, generating clinical trials, looking at partnership with medical societies, looking at patient diagnosis. I mean, the list is endless now in medical affairs. So that evolution has given more opportunities, more roles to the medical professionals to join and build their career, build their growth in this in this evolving industry. This will grow further because future lies in partnerships. Future lies in biotech innovation. What we are seeing as an industry in healthcare ecosystem is that it's not only US but also China and Japan. They are and Korea. They are kind of rapidly evolving in their innovation, and we see more and more partnerships of Indian companies with these multinationals and bring those innovative molecules into India. And once this innovation comes in, we need science to educate our clinicians, to educate our patients, right? And there comes the role of medical affairs. We also need evidence to really look at patient outcomes. Here comes the role of medical evidence. We need early diagnosis, awareness. Here comes the role of. So, I mean, I can go on and on where the medical affairs would be, in India in future. And I foresee as one of the core pillar, the core strategic pillar, I would say. Gone are the days of support function when we used to call as medical affairs as a support function. No, I mean the mindset right now is core strategic partner, in the business. And without medical, you cannot run business now. I mean that's the reality, right? So with that kind of context, I welcome all the professionals who are watching this webinar of Pharmasteer, and we go long way. I think Viraj is one of the early custodians. So thank you, Viraj, for continuing this. And we are just taking the baton from you and just passing it on, and really making it, further. Further kind of we really need to expand it further across India, and have more and more medics kind of uh, kind of we really need to make them aware what pharmaceutical industry is all about, right? So break that monotony. So I think KEM is at the forefront of breaking that monotony, and then we need to really expand this across India. So with that, thank you, Ashish, and thank you to the esteemed faculty of KEM Hospital. Thank you once again, for this program. Ashish, you are on mute if you're speaking.
Not audible, Ashish.
Yeah.
Ashish, you are not audible.
What about now? Is it
Yes.
fine? All right, perfect. Apologies for that glitch. We are living in this digital world, and sometimes it backfires at odd moments. Apologies for that. Right. Thanks a lot, Dr. Sandeep, for your talk. Now, let me quickly invite Dr. Shashank Srinivasan, Medical Director, Oncology Business Unit, AstraZeneca India. Dr. Shashank, clinician and leader in oncology and alumnus of Tata Memorial Hospital, Mumbai. At TMH, he served as a consultant in the GI Cancer Disease Management Group within the Division of Radiation Oncology, contributing to multidisciplinary care and translational practice. Currently, he is serving as Medical Director for Oncology, AstraZeneca India, overseeing the end to end medical and diagnostics portfolio in oncology and defining strategy, guiding evidence generation, and strengthening partnerships to advance precision oncology care and measurable patient outcomes. With that, I'll invite Dr. Shashank onto the stage. So over to you.
Thanks a lot, Ashish. Warm welcome to everyone to this beautiful program, and thank you so much for the faculty from KEM for joining us, and we're very grateful for your partnership. This is the problem when I follow Sandeep. There are not a lot of wise things that I can say which are different to what has already been said by him. But post lunch session, I will not take a lot of time. But what a proud privilege to be amongst young minds on a Saturday afternoon. This is truly for people like us who've been teachers in the past. These are the moments that get your juices flowing again, where you feel alive again, interacting with young people who have dreams in their eyes or not cynical yet. But like Sandeep said, I think very, very, very rightly, medical affairs is not a support function any longer. Front and center of everything that we do in the pharma world, I believe, is driven by medical affairs now, especially with how complex science is becoming, with innovation, new sort of therapies coming in. Why just medical affairs? The sky is the limit in terms of any function that a doctor wants to be in today. Dr. Viraj is a shining example, transitioning from a medical role to now, assuming commercial leadership as well. And that is where that medical acumen, that strategic thought process comes in and really shines through in terms of what you can bring to the table for, leading organizations in terms of science and innovation. Now, like Ashish said, I was in the clinics for a long time. And when I moved to the industry, much like Sandeep, probably not as accidental, more intentional. But I was so lost. In the clinics, we have a very set routine, 8 o'clock ward rounds, started OPD at 8:30. You know very clearly what you're going to do till 8:30 in the night. When I came into the industry, I was absolutely lost. I did not know what physician engagement meant, what other functions look like, what was market access, what did regulatory do, what was the function of my sales colleagues, how am I supposed to work with them. Very different journeys that different molecules are on. Some are pre-launch, some are at launch, some are post-exclusivity. How do you tie all of this in? It took me a good 6 months to try and figure my way around all of this. I think what Pharmasteer will do for all of you, and eventually you get the opportunity to even intern at AstraZeneca, will sort of condense that journey really quickly and give you a very beautiful snapshot in terms of what the industry looks like. Right? I think make the most of this opportunity. You have great minds who will be, talking with you, exchanging ideas with you, and we intend for this to be a platform of exchange of ideas, not just a monologue. So with that, I think I wish you all the best. In the next couple of weeks, you'll go through multiple sessions that will probably enrich you, and we'll also try and learn from you. So yeah, with that, Ashish, I'll hand back to you, and wish everyone all the best for the program.
Great, great. Thank you so much, Dr. Shashank, first of all, for being here with us today and for your encouraging words, which I am sure that must have motivated the students. Thanks a lot for that. With that, let me now invite Dr. Sandhya Kamath. Dr. Sandhya is an accomplished pharmacologist and educator with MD in pharmacology from University of Bombay, bringing 33 years of undergraduate and 25 years of postgraduate teaching experience. She serves as advisor to FERCI and nodal officer for GSMC Multidisciplinary Research Unit under DHR. And she has extensive ethics leadership experience as ex-member secretary of Institutional Ethics Committee and member of Naroji Wadia Ethics Committee. She is faculty leader for workshops in clinical research methodology, GCP, preclinical research, and herbal research. With multiple awards and original research papers, she is the co-author of the textbook Pharmacology and Pharmacotherapeutics. With that, please join me in welcoming Dr. Sandhya ma'am on stage. Ma'am, over to you.
Thank you for that kind introduction, Ashish, and welcome, dear participants. Good afternoon to you. And I also would like to thank the medical leadership at AstraZeneca, Dr. Sandeep, Dr. Shashank, and of course you, Ashish, who has been behind this. And I'll talk about Viraj a little later on because he's an important part of this whole program. So it's my pleasure to welcome you all to this Pharmasteer 2026, the sixth orientation program organized by us in collaboration with AstraZeneca on the medical affairs function in the pharmaceutical industry. Now, this we initiated in 2020, and Dr. Viraj Radyadaksh, who was our student, a student of our department, he came to me and as an alumnus, of course, and he said that, why not start this program in medical affairs function? It would be very good for the young postgraduates who are going to join the industry later on. So we had a lot of discussion on what topics to include, and then we thought we would restrict it to the medical affairs function because majority of you postgraduate students join the medical affairs function. So we thought that we would do an orientation before this so that we can make the best use of your posting because many of you nowadays are posted for 2 months in the pharmaceutical industry. Dr. Sandeep and Dr. Shashank, both of them have told you that medical affairs is a support function and a lot more about than what we would know as academicians, what you actually do in the medical affairs. However, as my understanding of an academic is that, the medical affairs function is the scientific bridge between the pharma company, the health profession, and the patients. And its primary mandate, I would say, is to see that the drugs, the medicines that are used appropriately, safely, and ethically, and that their use is based on sound medical evidence. So it's not only science-driven, but it's also patient-centered. As postgraduate students of pharmacology, I think you're uniquely positioned for this role. And as MSLs or medical science liaisons, as you'll are called when you join the pharma company, you'll be engaging in dialogues with key opinion leaders. Again, they are also called KOLs, and you will have to ensure that the information that is given to them is accurate, it's balanced, it's evidence-based. And you'll be working closely with pharmacovigilance to monitor the safety signals and ensure that emerging risks are addressed quickly. You will have to identify gaps in knowledge about a drug and lead maybe perhaps real-world evidence studies. You might have to lead some investigator-initiated studies and sometimes perhaps registries and especially post-marketing data collection to understand how medicines work outside clinical trials. So how can you prepare yourself for this role? During your postgraduate journey, what I urge you to do is I urge you to look beyond the theoretical information about a drug. Every time you study a drug's new mechanism of action, ask yourself, how would I explain the value of this mechanism to a KOL? How would this drug solve an unmet medical need? We'll therefore realize that it is extremely important to remain in touch with the clinical branches. As postgraduates of pharmacology, you become paraclinical, but try your best to remain in touch with the clinical branches. Whenever possible, go on rounds with the physicians in the clinical branches, of course, and Nowadays, you have compulsory district residency posting. Make the best use of that. Try to interact with the physicians during during your district residency program. And how will this help you? This will help you to question, to analyze, and to interpret evidence. So this was the science part of it. The second important part of medical affairs function, as I said, is the patient centricity. Today, patient-centered approach has become a standard for high-quality care to improve patient outcomes. And in medical affairs, your role could be as simple as providing personalized educational materials to enhance the understanding of the treatment, creating digital tools to track adherence and appointment reminders, transportation to clinics, and manage side effects. And just today we had a lecture on not a lecture, a seminar on colorectal cancer, and we had invited an expert from Tata Memorial Hospital, and I asked him that when these pharma, the MSLs come and ask you, you know, that what do you as a key opinion leader want from us, from the pharma company? He said, yes, I would still say I know the science, but I'm interested in the patient programs that a pharma company has. So, you know, that is how important patient centricity has become today. So remember that today the industry doesn't only want people who know the science, it needs people who can apply the science to improve human health. And you are the future leaders who will ensure that innovation just doesn't stay in a peer-reviewed journal, but actually transforms the lives of patients. And therefore, we've rightly called this orientation program Empowering Future Medical Leaders. So with that, I thank you all for registering for this program and keeping your trust in us that we'll give you a good program. And I wish you all a deeply enriching and meaningful learning experience. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, ma'am, for sharing your words. In fact, it's all about integration, ensuring the integration of evidence-based science into the clinical practice so that more and more number of clinicians are taking informed decisions for the patients. Thank you so much for reiterating that. And with that, let me now thank all our dignitaries for being here with us today and inaugurating Pharmasteer 2026. And now let's start our day with general guidance for the students. Every session is scheduled for 30 minutes with 20 minutes of presentation and 10 minutes of Q&A. You can ask your questions during the session using the chat box option, and your questions would be responded during the last 10 minutes of the session. With that, let us steer ourselves to the first session of the day, and which is pharma industry and medical affairs landscape. And to take that, may I invite Dr. Sandeep Arora, Medical Director, AstraZeneca India, on stage to take this forward. Sir, over to you. Sir, you are on mute.
My bad. Sorry. Welcome, students, once again. And, to the first, I will not call it as a lecture, but more of an interactive session I would like to have, because I love hearing what the young minds are thinking about, right? And please do, mention your questions and comments in the chat box. And Ashish, just keep looking at that so that, in case there are questions, I can stop in between and then go on with the presentation. So can I have the slide deck, please?
Niro, can you please share the screen?
Yeah, next slide. So briefly, what I'll be talking about is I'll give you a brief about what AstraZeneca is, right? And why did I join AstraZeneca? And then what our mission vision is all about. You might have seen in my background screen, by the way, everyone is having a background screen of Pharmasteer, but I'm just keeping it as a MedAspire because this is a theme which we created internally within our medical affairs function, that what we want to be in 2030. This is our vision. Like, we really want to inspire patient outcomes. And then it is in line with our global AstraZeneca vision and mission as well. So as the first slide say, AstraZeneca is a global biopharmaceutical driven company, highly believing in science and patient-led outcomes. And our main purpose is to push the boundaries of science to deliver the life-changing medicines. Now, when we say that we push the boundaries of science, there are three important things we always keep in mind. How do we transform outcomes for our? So we have three pillars: people, society, and planet. So people is basically like, how do we make sure that the medicines we innovate are accessible to the broad range of patients, right? Eligible patients. Society is basically how we partner with the society and the healthcare ecosystem to advance, the standard of care, given the different economies we have in the world. And the last piece is the planet, which is how do we make sure that we are sustainable? Sustainable in the sense that how we take care of our planet. And a lot has been going on in the discussion related to planet. So I'll not get deep into that, but our goal is to ensure that everything is followed in the sustainable manner, at AstraZeneca. And as we move into the next slide, if you can just, yeah. So these are some of our aspirations for 2030, what we call as bold aspiration and vision. You know, so by 2030, we want to be the company that pioneers in science in the way that we delivers 20 new molecular entities, and these are all new molecular entities. That means every medicine would be different in terms of its novel mechanism of action, in terms of the unmet need, and in terms of improving the patient outcome. And by doing so, we achieve the revenue globally by becoming an $80 billion company. Recently, we released our uh, year-end results, and we have grown almost close to 9%, and our annual revenue currently is around $58 billion. And then also, with respect to sustainability, we want to be carbon negative. In fact, AstraZeneca, before joining AstraZeneca, I wasn't aware about what actually is tangible carbon negative. Here we have carbon budgets on the way we travel, how much we travel. So that's what we mean by carbon negative, by ensuring that we really travel in a very sustainable manner and in the most critical areas where we should be traveling. So that's one aspect of being carbon negative. The other way is manufacturing. How do we make our manufacturing sustainable to the planet as well? And more, you can have a look when you go into the website or search more into AstraZeneca. Next slide, Ashish. So, as I said, we want to be leaders in science in the portfolio we lead. And these are our five major portfolios where we deal with. One is oncology, which Shashank takes care of as a medical director. And the other one is biopharmaceutical and rare disease, where I'm taking care. So, biopharmaceutical is cardiovascular, renal, metabolism, respiratory and immunology, vaccines and immunotherapies, and then, of course, rare disease. And in these areas, you will see innovations happening. And in these areas, we will have 20 new medicines by the year 2030. Next slide. So that's our sustainable strategy, which I was talking earlier as well. From everything, from lab to the patient. When we say sustainable strategy, it means access to healthcare, it means environmental protection, and it means ethics and transparency. And being medical affairs, I think this is very critical for us to understand that how we are ensuring that our medicine reach the wider set of patients, which is access, and how do we create partnerships to improve the access. And in doing so, how do we make our ways of working completely transparent, completely ethical, completely compliant, and in terms of following the local regulations or the law of the land, right? So that's where ethics and transparency comes in. And in doing so, making sure that we have this ambition of zero carbon, we have this ambition of sustainability, and we have this ambition of ensuring that we protect the natural resources. Next slide. Yeah. So a little bit about AstraZeneca India. AZ in India started 45 years. In fact, it it kind of commemorates with my year of birth, which is 1979. And so we are a 45-year-old organization in India. We have a vast presence across India, whether it is sales and marketing, whether it is the global capability center in IT, AI, global capability center in R&D, whether it is clinical development, clinical operations, pharmacovigilance, regulatory. It's all there right now. We have a very strong footprint in Bangalore and Chennai, and our sales and marketing would be soon relocating to Mumbai. And we are a 4,000 plus people strong organization in the country, with with the span across the spectrum of pharmaceutical industry life cycle. Right. Next slide. And most of the multinationals, AstraZeneca is deeply rooted and very integral are our what we call as core values, core AstraZeneca values. And this is learned by heart by every AstraZeneca employee who joins the organization, which is we follow science, we put patient first, we play to win, we do the right thing, and we are entrepreneurial. And in doing so, we ensure that we are following our bold ambition and vision towards 2030, which is delivering the right innovative medicines to our patients. Next slide. Okay, so that was about AstraZeneca. Ashish, do we have any questions in the chat, or because I'll shifting the gear towards more of where the industry is going towards?
We are still receiving it, sir. I'll put that across once done.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So now I think this is very so I would say pharmaceutical industry is at an inflection point. And the reason I say so is because a lot has evolved in last 2.5 years to 3 years with the advent of AI. And no longer we see industry as a traditional pill company, right? We see industry now as a platform company. And the reason I say so is because it's just not the drug, it's how you deliver the drug to the patients, how you discover the drug for the patients, how you get the access of drug to the patients, how you engage with the physicians with this innovation, and how you kind of partner with the healthcare organizations or governmental societies in ensuring that the drug reaches the patient. So AI has significantly fast-tracked drug discovery. AI would literally fast-track clinical trial enrollment, and AI would also help improve a lot of things related to regulatory approval. So that's on the pre-access side. And on the post-access side, we strongly envision that going forward, in fact, industry would be one of the leading forefront runners of partnering with the organizations like healthcare organizations or so in improving the diagnosis of the patient. And here comes the role of AI, how quickly we can improve and increase the patient funnel so that the wider set of patients can come in and get the right treatment. Similarly, in digital therapeutics, like how do we get the medicines with the right set of education, awareness, as well as with the right treatment protocol, what we call as guideline concordant care or GDMT or guideline directed management therapy or guideline based treatment protocol early to the patient. And here comes the role of AI. So, I mean, what I mean to say here is that in case you are planning to join industry, do also look at not only reading your science, but also reading about AI, because AI is going to unlock a lot of strategic levers for our industry going forward. Next slide. Okay, so I was talking about healthcare ecosystem, and ecosystem. When you say ecosystem, you have to look at two aspects. One is how the drug is positioned in the whole treatment or the management paradigm. That's one aspect. The second aspect, which is often neglected, by the way, is the patient journey, right? How the patient moves from, getting aware, getting diagnosed, getting treated, and getting followed up, right? And here comes the holistic ecosystem. What I mean to say, one is this treatment paradigm, and the second is the patient journey. And how do we kind of marry these two with the kind of strategy the strategic imperatives we deploy to improve this ecosystem. For example, and there are examples which are given over here, is for the risk assessment. Now, one of the thing in cardiovascular and metabolic space is the risk categorization. So the example listed here is a registry for evidence generation for CV risk categorization, which is I Care Me, right? And the now what will this do? This will basically look at patient demographics so that the treating physician at the end of the journey is looking at what best treatments can be given to these patients. Point number one. Point number two, another example is written over here is cardiorenal risk algorithm, right? Now, this is where the AI enabled assessment can really help looking at the vast database of patients and really looking at what best treatment protocols can be given to the patients. So what I mean to say here is that look at two journeys. Treatment journey, right? The treatment paradigm where the drug positions itself, and the second one is the patient journey. And then try to marry these two to create your strategic models of your medical affairs, whether it is the therapeutic model or whether it is the economic model. I mean, there are various categorizations where you can look at the ecosystem, for improving diagnosis and awareness. Another example I want to give is the TRICOG, which is the early heart failure identification. Basically, it is powered by an AI technology where you can have ECG combined with echo, 2D echo, to look at the risk classification of heart failure. And then if there is an early identification, the patients can be managed as per the guidelines. So that's how the ecosystem evolves, right? So I think, yeah, one more point I just want to touch is the cost analysis based on the economic model. So right now, a lot of talk is happening, and it's been happening for last 3-4 years, in fact, on health economics outcome research. So if you want to get into HEOR space, you need to understand various cost models like cost utility, cost benefit, cost effective, etc. But having said that, India is still evolving in this space. 70% is still out of pocket in India. So that means patients pay out of pocket to get the drug, right? Now that's a basic fundamental. We can't change that until and unless there is some national level or policy level changes which happens in the country. So for doing that, economic modeling, you need to show the value of the drug in terms of cost benefit or cost effectiveness, right? If the patient is already paying out of pocket, then it becomes very difficult for any pay, because there are no payers, there are no reimbursers. So it's very difficult to show the payer the cost effectiveness, if the patient is paying out of pocket. But if the patient is getting reimbursed, or like for example in army or in railways or in ESI, where they have a dedicated reimbursement payers sitting over there, or even in hospital chains, sometimes we're trying there as well in private hospital chains. So if there are reimbursement payers sitting over there, then you can really look at clinical plus economic evidence generation and do this modeling to show the value of the drug, provided it is innovative and provided that it is cost effective that way. So this kind of thing actually works a much in developed world versus the developing world like India. Next slide, Ashish. Okay, so I think I was talking about patient journey, and here comes the slide on patient journey, which is from awareness to diagnosis to referrals to intervention. So, and one of the great example I can give here is on rare disease. Rare disease is one of the area where the patients are rare, by the way, and you have to find the patients. Not only that, you have to find the treating physicians also who are treating these diseases. So, the patient journey becomes very, very critical from a referral standpoint, from awareness standpoint, from diagnosis standpoint in rare diseases. What you have to do is you have to really look at what kind of rare disease. For example, I'll give you an example of, let's say, metabolic rare disease disorder, which normally affects your lysosomal enzymes, right? So a genetic disease specialist is the one who actually treats these kind of disorders. But how do they get the patients? Because these patients might be sitting up in pediatric units or in primary care units, etc. So you have to create a patient journey where the patient flows from primary care to pediatrician to genetic disease, or from pediatrician to genetic disease. Or let's say there is a complication, then it might goes to a specialist like gastroenterologist, cardiologist. So how does this go back to the genetic disease? So the whole mapping of patient journey becomes very critical, so that your interventions for these patients are important for improving the adoption of care, right? So that's what is important for mapping out the patient journey with an example like rare disease. And most of the companies, including AstraZeneca, believe strongly in developing the patient journey for rare diseases specifically. Next slide, Ashi. So, okay, so I think this is a very busy slide, and I would not bore you with that kind of busy slide. What it means is basically, as I was saying, based on the patient journey and the treatment journey of the patient, you can then intervene basis the tactic of your, of your therapy. And this is one of the example. Like for example, in the middle row, um, you can see the tactics like registries or multidisciplinary team, MDTs, multidisciplinary team, or increase early DX, which is diagnosis, or scientific publications, or HUR studies, or budget impact model, which is BIM, right, or partnerships, so on and so forth. So I think this mapping the right journey basis the right insights will help you design the right tactics, right? So that's how the medical strategy should be based at. A, look at your patient journey. B, look at your treatment paradigm. And C, I'm just adding one more element. Look at the insights from your opinion leaders as well, because they do matter at the end of the day. And then look at your medical strategy. And medical strategy can come from your evidence generation, can come from your guideline concordant care, or looking at the guidelines with the medical societies, and then percolating with the help of MSLs to the larger set of audience, then having the partnership with the healthcare organizations, or center of excellences, or the government bodies, right? And then last is your patient diagnosis, right? So there are various strategies based on these journeys which you kind of enable. Next slide. Okay, I think this is very similar, so I'll just skip this, Ashish. Maybe next slide. Yeah, good. So I think I'm on time, Ashish, with respect to the lecture.
You're perfect.
Perfect?
Yes,
Good.
you're perfect, sir. We also do have received some good questions from the students, of course.
Okay.
And my question to you, my first question to you would be revolving around AI and digital thing, which you just spoke about in terms of how we have evolved from last couple of years. So the first question is, what major shifts in medical affairs you anticipate in next 5 years in terms of how medical affairs function?
Wow, that's a great question, keeping AI in mind, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so one of the things is that we really need to shift our mindset from the traditional way of doing to a different way of doing, keeping basics in mind. What are those basics? Science, compliance, and collaboration with the business, right? So I think I'm just keeping basics in mind, right? Always be on top of your science, always be on top of your compliance, and always be on top of your collaboration. Now, having said that, how AI would help medical affairs evolve is we would see more and more diagnostic AI tools in improving the patient diagnosis. So we have to be vigilant in terms of how we partner with the AI innovative companies or organizations which can help improve patient diagnosis. So that's point number one. So you will see an improvement in diagnosis of the patient. Second, how do we generate evidence? Right. Currently, our evidence generation is pretty much into looking at a prospective way of running a study, right? But can we look at AI tool which is integrated into hospital management records and do a live feedback on analytics, right? Giving the right parameters what we want. So what we call as AI enabled data and outcomes, right? So deploying AI there, right? So that's point number two. Then point number three is digital therapeutics, what I was talking about. So digital therapeutics is a culmination uh, of your guideline directed care and patient diagnosis to identify the right patient for a particular drug, right? So that's the third way of looking at AI. And the last piece is a bit important for especially for the young medics. Why I say so is that if you're not familiar with AI, then you should be in case you want to evolve in your job. And the reason I say so is because companies will have a finite number of resources, finite number of budget, but AI can actually uh, give more uh, give more reach, awareness, and access to the larger set of physicians through the programs we do, like for example a virtual MSL. We can have an interactive virtual MSL, like the way we have seen in a lot of AI, movies. I mean, there have been some AI related movies, AI related shows. So why can't we have a virtual MSL which can be AI led, right? So how we can have a control over virtual MSL through our physical MSL. So that would be one aspect internally, I would say, in the role which medical affairs evolve into. And then the last piece is into, and I touched upon this in the drug discovery. So how do we run our drug and related discovery and clinical trials, especially in the R&D space, right? Where how the drug is discovered in terms of targets, biomarkers, how the clinical trial is done in terms of patient enrollment, and how regulatory submissions are done. So everything can be AI led there, of course, supervised by our scientists and medical affairs professionals.
All right. Thanks a lot, Dr. Sandeep, for responding to that. I think my next question is something around clinical and commercial interference, because we know that we work in matrixed environment with cross-functional teams working together. And the next question is around that itself. So the question is, what are the best practices for maintaining scientific integrity while collaborating cross-functionally with commercial teams?
Okay. Um, I think in multinationals, I would say compliance is not uh, followed only by compliance team, right? It is followed by every individual, which is sitting either in medical affairs or in commercial function. And if I think it's like in the DNA in a multinational, right? So what we need to be cognizant is that we need to have the right expectation setting with our commercial when we design the strategy, and this comes when we design the brand plans, when we launch the molecules, or we are looking at the life cycle management. So when we look at the strategic imperatives, and then when it boils down to the tactics, because that's where the rubber hits the road, right? So then the expectation setting has to be very clear that this has to be led by medical, this has to be led by commercial, this has to be collaborated between medical and commercial. Now, having the right expectation setting in the brand plan meetings and the right, operational cadences would definitely improve cross-functional collaboration. I see a lot of questions in the chat. Maybe we need to look into the chat box as well.
All right, so yeah. So I think the next question is, how does medical affairs maintain independence? I think you just
Yeah, we
answered
have
it.
done. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. How does career progression differ between pharmacovigilance? Yeah, right. So maybe you would want to.
Yeah, I have interviewed so many candidates these days in AZ and even in my earlier organizations that I often ask this question: what is your interest area? Your interest area would define your career progression. Don't look at what others are doing. What you are interested in, whether you are interested in looking at the safety aspects of the drug, or whether you are interested in going out, meeting with the KOLs, engaging them, having those scientific connects. Are you interested in that? So it all depends on how your personality is and what your area of interest is. That would define your career progression. Uh, and at the end of the day, both verticals have their growth opportunity. It's just not that medical affairs is the only one. Pharmacovigilance also has a growth opportunity in India because a lot of GCCs are coming now. We have Novartis, BMS, AZ, Roche, Lilly, all have set up their GCCs and they will improve going forward.
All right, thanks a lot, sir. I do have a lot of questions, which I tend to park it for now due to paucity of time, since we'll have to move ahead with the next session. Thank you so much, students, for the great questions, and thank you so much, Dr. Sandeep, for responding them here live. And I'll also reach out to you with the questions that are pending, and then we can revert it back to the ones
Yeah.
who are asking.
One
Thanks a
thing,
lot for that.
one thing I can say, guys, in case you have questions, do reach out to me on LinkedIn and we can definitely connect. I'm there, right? Happy to help. Thank you all. Have a good course ahead.
Great. Thank you so much, Dr. Sandeep, for being here with us today. Thanks a lot for that. With that, let me now move on to our second topic of the day, and which is medical strategy and launch excellence. And for that, we have with us Dr. Bharat HS, Trials, Publications, and Medical Excellence Lead, AstraZeneca India. Dr. Bharat is a pharmaceutical physician and medical affairs leader with 18 years of pharmaceutical industry experience. He drives a global ready medical strategy, LCM, evidence generation, and scientific communication, currently leading trials and publications and medical excellence team. He intends to deliver HM-mandated studies and real-world evidence with strong governance, partner oversight, and audit readiness. With that, please join me in welcoming Dr. Bharat on stage. Dr. Bharat, over to you.
Ashish, thank you. Hope the slides are visible.
Yes,
Yes.
just put it on slideshow, sir.
That's the major doubt and self-doubt I have.
Yes,
Right?
it is there.
My voice is bearable. I know it is audible.
Yes,
Right?
yes,
Hope
it
it
is
is
audible,
good.
sir. Please go ahead, sir.
Right? Okay. Fine. With that, so thank you, Ashish, for that introduction. Yes, we will try to just cover about because we did hear from the dignitaries regarding how medical is probably partnering in the overall pharmaceutical business, right? And for that, medical is no more a support function, and it's a strategic collaborator, probably a strategic leader for that matter. Correct. So that's how it is going on, and that's how probably the trend is shifting towards more of medical, wherein the medical probably when was medical coming into picture earlier? It used to be query solving, correct? Resolution of queries from HCP, from sales, training the sales teams, or probably engaging the KOLs, etc. Correct. So that used to be all those the activities were post launch, but now there is a lot we medical needs to do before launch, because especially for innovator companies, right? There is a very short runway, that is still the loss of exclusivity, right? So that is where the product is new, science is new, and that's the time probably we need to reach out to the market and reach more and more patients. And for that to happen, medical would drive that kind of activities, right? So with that, probably strategy is always important. And in one word, this is what strategy means. Correct. So it is difficult to understand what a strategy is if the person himself is not clear, the one who is creating it. Correct. So it has to be very clear. The one probably it could be synthesized individually, it could be synthesized through the cross-functional collaboration. Ideally, it has to be that, so that is conceived cross-functionally, and then it has to be communicated. And this has to be understood. If it is like this, others will not understand, and that activity will not continue. Correct? That strategic mindset would be lost. But if the strategy is clear, only then probably all the people in the room and also whosoever are the partners working on that particular activity, they would understand. And that's where the run begins on the overall medical activities or overall uh, medical marketing activities, if I'm permitted to say so. Why is it important? Correct. So if you look at pharmaceutical companies are the ones who the business is making medicines and selling medicines. Correct. That's where it is. So how do we benefit, or why do we need to do that? Because patients, there are a lot of patients, and we need to ensure there's a faster access to the right therapy. right therapies are coming, but still the patients are going on the age-old treatments. I think that's not the world which we want to live in. Probably India has had that kind of a state for a few decades earlier, but now we are at par with any good reference country, right? So our patients also deserve that kind of an access at an early stage, like what patients in other developed worlds would be having. So that's the kind we need to ensure faster access to the right therapy. Clinicians, even they need to they need newer solutions, newer weapons, probably to combat the patient issues, right? And for them, what is required is a clear guidance, and that has to come from the innovator company. So, wherein during the pre-launch phase, whatever the strategy you make, I think you should have the clinicians to be a part of it, obviously KOLs in that matter, and ensure with the credible evidence as well, be it epidemiological studies, the phase 3 trials, why there's an unmet need, what needs to be done, and how it will improve. It could be simulation models, whatever different kinds of evidence which is required, but it has to be credible. Right? That's where the clinicians would buy that point. And if because pharma is one business where you the business impact is because of the what it has to reach patients, but it was always through clinicians, correct? So clinicians are the decision makers, and we need to probably influence them with all the right things or the right evidence and the right materials which we have. Health systems, they also would help because of all these medical strategy. How? Because that is where we can deliver value to all the healthcare systems, be it the institutions, be it the reimbursed markets, or even be it insurance companies, or even the patients paying on upfront, right? They are paying a cost to the medicine, but we need to create that value, and that value should be communicated well so that the patient is finally getting that value. The right medicine should at the right patient and even at the right time. That is where the value comes, right? And that is where we are probably able to influence the overall patient outcomes. That is it. Affordability is a commercial kind of a game, but medical, probably through health economics and outcome research, medical also probably will get more and more involved in coming times. So affordability is one. So rather than affordability, I think we can also use the term accessibility. Correct. So access doesn't mean only affordability, but affordability would also be a part of the access activities, which has to be there so that the solutions reach the patients. And for companies, this is very much pivotal, because there is a responsible uptake of the newer solution. They become a trustable partner, and obviously the profits or the revenues would also be impacted through this kind of a strategic activities. So what would be the ambition for a medical strategy, right? So patient journey, we need to understand where they are stuck and what are the outcomes that would really matter to the patient. That is where we need to look at what is the unmet need, understand more from a clinical landscape, what is there, and understand from them what is the unmet need and what are the gaps which are there, where we can probably fill that gap through these newer solutions. Scientific narrative, any conference you go, you will see a lot of presentations, all those things are scientific narrative, right? The narrative should be simple, of course, so that a lot of clinicians or a lot of people over there can consume it, digest it, and probably implement it. It has to be simple. It has to be consistent. And it has to be backed by robust evidence, as our faculty members were also mentioning. It has to be backed by robust evidence, because only then, what we said in the previous slide of being a trustable partner, right? We will be a trustable partner only if we are showing that the right evidence also. And from medical, we need to have clear objectives, because HCPs, the clinicians, for them, the main thing is, meaning I worked across different therapeutic areas. There are a lot of newer solutions coming in, but the clinicians are not ready to adapt it. Why? Because they feel, can it harm the patient? Right? That is where they would have their apprehensions. Anything coming new, because uh, one is evidence-based, another is experience-based practice. Correct? So their experience itself can sometimes be a great evidence, and so they would be having those kind of a reluctance to accept something new. So, but if you are able to build that confidence through the right communication, evidence, the KOL talks, right? Having those kind of an advocacy groups, and also influencing the guidelines. Influencing the guidelines doesn't mean that, right, my product needs to be there, but has to be in the right kind of a selection. So if there's a right patient selection for this kind of a newer solution, that is where I think the clinicians would also gain a lot of confidence, and there'll be more and more people who can adopt to that newer guidelines. So overall North Star, if medical affairs, especially we in AstraZeneca, what we are looking at is transform care. So transforming care. So when you say transform care, it doesn't mean one patient, two patients. Of course, the patient numbers we do not know, but it has to be at a very big, large level. Can we transform care for a particular disease in India? I think that's where we need to look at when we want to launch the product. And if we need to transform care, what is that transformation we want to bring in? And what is that? So then what are the kind of activities? How are we going to do that? Probably then it comes. So all those things would be interlinked, and that's where we'll have to do. So I just, you can see some snippets from AstraZeneca. What are the kind of transform care initiatives taken? One is revolving around earlier diagnosis and earlier treatment. One is revolving around transforming care for patients with immune-mediated diseases. One more is for cancers. One more is for respiratory. As Dr. Sandeep also mentioned, the kind of therapy areas we're working in, we want to transform care in each and every therapy area where we are present in. And that would be our boldest ambition to do. So, and we know because of the awareness, the kind of evidence which is coming up, right, and all the entire human evolution, aging, different things could be attributed, pollution, environment, diet, lifestyle, right? All those things could be, but overall disease burden is increasing. So that is clear. We understand now that disease burden is increasing. So if the disease burden is increasing, we need to have unique and powerful vision on how do we look at each and every disease. What is the kind of transform care initiative that we want for each and every disease? For example, there's this the one of the few of the disease areas which we work upon. For example, for asthma, if it is for asthma, eliminate asthma attacks, drive to remission, prevent the COPD exacerbations and CV death in the COPD, eradicate unplanned admissions for heart failure in the heart failure space, prevent progression to kidney failure due to CKD, leave no immunocompromised patient behind, eliminate lung and breast cancer leading causes of death, double diagnosis rate, extend survival in ATTR. So it is across the most common disease to the rarest of the diseases. The entire spectrum is there. But if you have decided to launch that product, work in that particular disease area, then you need to know what you want to achieve. Probably it could be in 2026. If we are starting today, 27, it is unlikely. So you'll have to start working on it probably at a very early stage. Probably if you start today, maybe we'll be able to transform care, which we could scale it probably in 3 years from now. At least we would need 2 to 3 years. And that is where all this strategy and the launch activities which are required would really be making those mark. So what should be our focus areas? If we want to transform care, what are the things which we can focus upon? So one is on diagnosis. Can we look at meaning detecting the patients early, the right patient? So who are the right patients? For that, we need newer diagnostics tools. It could be point of care kind of a testing, advanced genomic testings, right? Or it could be AI-based diagnostic tools. It could be different things, right? So, and in diagnostics also, there are two, whether you do it for a patient or do it for a community. If you're doing it for a community, it is screening. If you do it for a patient, it is diagnosis. So you will have to decide. Well, probably it is not the same for across the therapy areas, right? For some of the diseases, you will have to do some of the activities. For some, screening would be very much necessary. For some of the diseases, screening would be meaningless. And so you should look at what is that kind of a diagnostic intervention you want to do, right? Or transform the diagnostics in that particular disease space. Guideline adoption, as spoken earlier also, we need to work on guideline adoption, because only then the newer science, the newer solutions, once they're adopted in the guidelines, they would be imbibed more and more and reaching more patients. Specialists, most of these specialists would be the early adopters, because you cannot expect generalists to probably adopt all the newer therapies because they would be looking up to the specialists. So you will have to, from medical affairs perspective, we will have to work on the specialists, right? And how do you personalize medicine? The more of a precision, bringing out precision in both diagnosis and treatment. So those are the kind of things which we'll have to educate the specialists upon. And finally, all these things would bring about a policy change, and we will have a policy leadership for that particular disease. Fine. And so what are the three systems? Probably you can just look at the focus area here. Earlier focus was there, and now also you can look at what are the three things we'll have to make an influence in the, with the HCPs, we'll have to make an influence in the system, and probably as it's also important, even from our perspective in India, we need to make an impact at the government institutions as well. These are the things probably we'll have to look at where we want to play, and maybe you can pick one, number 1, 2, 3, what we prioritize, what would be the first, what would be second, what would be third, depending on the overall economic as well as the life cycle stage of the product. Now, those are the kind of a strategic activities you do, so now adding to the second part of my talk, which is on the launch, right? So all those strategies you will build probably to launch newer therapies, newer solutions into the market, right? So what are the things which we need to be aware of while we are launching? Now, medical has to lead it, right? It is not that someone else from other team, commercial, business development, or marketing, they would come and tell you to do and do such as so and so things. That should not be the case, but rather we should be more proactive and understand what are the things we need to have in launch, so that would lead to the transform care initiative. So one is timely resourcing. We need to have the right people, correct? So right people who are required much before, not after the product is launched, but much well ahead of the product launch timelines, probably 2 years. So if you are in a particular company in a corporate office, probably you might be the only one who will be working on that kind of a pipeline product. Rest all would be working on all the established products, the larger commercial teams. But the medical person will be the first one to start off on working on the product pipeline. Of course, it cannot happen alone. So first, medical, which is the HO strategic medical should come, then the field medical MSLs, they are required. And there are some cross functions also, which you need to understand who are the kind of cross functions we need, and probably influence the business to get those resources in a timely manner, so that we should not miss the bus when the product is receiving the regulatory approval, but still we have not primed the market. That should not be the case. So whatever is required, probably you'll have to time it appropriately and resource it accordingly, right? So a good amount of strategic vision is required while doing the resourcing activities. Market understanding. So market understanding is important because you are getting into a new disease area, new therapy area. It could be a new product, new disease. So what are the different kinds of market research, including social media listening, right? All these kind of inputs would require. And again, you cannot do it alone. You cannot do it only through your company. You'll have to collaborate with the right kind of partners. It could be CROs, it could be some of the agencies who are good in social media, who are good in doing market research. You'll have to partner with them, have the medical kind of a guidance to them, so that what are the things which you want to understand the market, you'll be able to derive out of that kind of an activity. So again, an investment and a partnership is required to understand the market better. Once you understood the market, you need to identify your customers and activate them, because product is somewhere 18 months, 24 months ahead of the timeline, right? Even KOLs might have listened to it at some global congresses, but they're not using it. There's no experience to it. How do you activate, unless they are PIs, of course? How do you activate them? How do you work with the, probably even at a phase 3 trials, if it's happening in our country, probably how do you engage with them? And engagement, it's not a transactional engagement. Engagement is a sense, the scientific engagement, so that they also start thinking about this newer solution now. Okay, and how do you make them advocates, so that dissemination is also happened by the time the new product hits the market. So you need to identify the right customers, which is KE mapping, engage them, and also educate them, so that they are able to cascade the education to a larger healthcare community. So that is required. Finally, if you are able to do all these things, and you need to know who are your influencers, KOL or KE, it means the one who are able to influence the treatment, one who are able to bring about that kind of a transformation in the practice of medicine. So one who can shape the practice of medicine. That those are the people whom you need to engage with at a very early stage. So then if you're able to do that, then the standard of care, I think we can shift. We can shift the standard of care. So what it was earlier, we can bring it to now with this newer solution. What should be the expected standard of care in our country once this product is available? Going by, because evidence, you can create a lot of evidence. The last part of it is evidence, and evidence, it should not be just for the sake of sake of one evidence creation. We have done 3 publications, 2 review articles, 5 consensus documents. Not required. Probably you can pick 1 or 2 which are the ones which would really drive the market. Correct. I was recently reading through a LinkedIn post, and it is not the number of publications and other things. It is the kind of impact which is really able to make. So pick that kind of. It could be an epidemiology study. It could be just a gap understanding, the care gap. What is the gap which is there for now? It could be different things. If required consensus, if required the kind of a guideline, probably how do you guideline would really take more time. So it may not be. But all these things can really influence the guidelines. That is at a subsequent level, which is beyond the slide, which is not visible within the slide. Maybe that's the stage which we'll have to reach. So those kind of a transformative evidence kind of a plan which you need to have. And so Dr. Sandeep did mention about the newer AI tools which are helpful. It can help because it can always tell you regarding the gaps in therapy. If such an AI tool is integrated in the electronic medical records, and if that is probably you get you will be a party to view it through all the right measures. I think then that you will be able to understand the disease gaps or the gaps in the current standard of care. That will be important. So if we've done all these things, probably what you call the strategy, you will have a right strategy through all your strategic mindset. If you're able to build that kind of a launch, I think we'll be able to, whatever the therapy areas which we were working in, just a hypothetical number I've put, we'll be able to reach more and more patients. It's a win. It's win for the individual because he gets a lot of satisfaction and recognition for doing such and such activity. It's a win for patients, and of course, it's a win for company. Right. So that's how we'll be able to do that. So it is not just probably one man company or some revenue INR which are able to get, but it is an impacting everyone in the ecosystem. So that's where such activities would really have a great meaning. So takeaway, probably I need to go right after this talk, though my wife doesn't allow me to have these kind of foods anymore, but still, since I eat less, I need to go for this kind of a takeaway. So what should be our North Star? Transform care by grounding strategy in the patient journey, unmet need, having a consistent scientific narrative, and having a clear objective what we need to achieve. Why it matters, I think we have spoken enough. It is good for patients, it's good for clinicians, and we create a great kind of a value out of all these activities. Where do we focus to drive this care? It could be at a diagnostics level, which includes screening. It has to be at the guidelines level, and it has to be at the policy shaping initiative as well. But guidelines and policies, because guidelines influence policy, we should not take it as same. Ambition and impact, accelerate adoption of the innovative medicines with the aim of reaching more and more people on GDMT. Sorry for the abbreviation here. GDMT, I'm sure most of you know, it's guideline directed medical therapy. So a lot of more and more patients need to go into the guideline directed medical therapy, which helps in improving the survival, reducing the morbidities, and increasing the cure rates. And that will have an impact for the life of lakhs of people. Millions is a Western word. For us, we are more in love with lakhs, right? So lakhs of people, like lakhs of salary we would want. Of course, there'll be ambitions to earn crores also. That's different. Okay, with this, I take a pause here. If there are any questions, I'll be happy to address.
All right. Thanks a lot, Dr. Bharat, for that excellent and thought-provoking talk. I do have received some great questions from the students, and I would like to get your answer to that. And my first question to you would be, what are non-negotiable components of robust medical strategy for launch, and how do you prioritize them? Negotiable components of robust medical strategy.
Correct. So meaning we look at internal and external, probably what kind of an internal resources you need to have. That is not negotiable. Right. Finally look at what is that journey which you need to probably, what is that milestone you need to achieve by so and so date, right? And today, having the resources, it wouldn't be negotiable, right? You need to have the right resources, and you need to have the right kind of activities. You need to right kind of activities to influence that external world, right? So if those two things in the midway, if there are some negotiations you need to do, some of the activities you need to skip, probably 1% less you need to do, right? So those things, it's always depending on prioritization. Externally, this is what I want to achieve, and for that, this is the bare minimum I need. Meaning that kind of a meaning, if you have that kind of a business acumen, then probably you need not negotiate much, and you will be able to get such kind of a resources at an early stage.
All right, great.
And whenever I see this chat on the screen, Ashish, I doubt why are people asking me questions. I confuse it with Chat GPT. Correct. That's the kind of AI built in right now, AI bug in my mind at least.
Right. Thanks a lot, Dr. Bharat, for that. The second question is really interesting, and that is something around insights. And the question is, how do you systematically translate pre-launch insights into actionable medical plans? It's really interesting coming from students out there.
Correct.
Dr. Bharat, your views. Yeah.
Like insights, like market understanding. When we put that particular aspect of market understanding, which is required for medical affairs to launch any particular product, right? So during that time, you interact with a lot of people. It could be through a third party where you do that market research. There'll be a lot of insights coming through that exercise. You'll be meeting the right set of customers. Meaning, of course, you need to identify the right set of customers. That also would be an insight to you. This is the right customer you need to meet, right? So through a lot of exercise you need to do, and finally you will be able to get into those people and get those insights. So then, if there are any, and when we say insights, because that's a big debate which we keeps happening in our internal medical teams, what is information, what is insight? But as the question is reading, right, insight is something which will impact our activities, correct? That kind of information, new information, we are able to get it and digest it and see what kind of a change we need to make in our current activities, so that the final milestone which we want to achieve probably is would really be helpful or smoother in the entire process. So those kind of things we do. For example, for one, I clearly remember, like we were looking at, we were working on SGLT2 inhibitors, which is in diabetes, right? When we were working on that, and we started reaching out to clinicians, endocrinologists, that it should be started first along with metformin, correct? That should be the standard of care which we want to achieve, because that helps the patients. That's how it is. Not just about our product, but on the entire class. But then I did get an insight at that point of time. Like, endocrinologists don't see the patients that early. Correct. Patients come to them probably when after their second line or third line of treatment is already there. So probably then endocrinologists are not the right people for us to understand. So then we'll have to change the activity and reach out to. That's an insight where it really helped me to target the right customers or right clinicians to have that kind of an impact. So those kind of a new thing which will change your direction. I think that you'll get a lot of insights, and we need to act on that as well.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Bharat, for responding to the questions. And thank you so much to the audience for the great questions. Thanks, Dr. Bharat, for being here with us today. And with that, let us now move forward to our next session of the day, which is career pathways and skills matrix, competency framework in medical affairs. And for that, we have with us none other than Dr. Viraj Rajyadhyaksh, Lung Regional Franchise Head, International Markets. Dr. Viraj is a transformative leader renowned for his strategic vision and collaborative approach in pharmaceutical industry. He exemplifies a leadership style that blends innovation with empathy, fostering an environment where cross-functional teams thrive and breakthroughs are achieved. Dr. Viraj's leadership is characterized by his ability to inspire and empower everyone, encouraging open communications and creative problem solving. He places a strong emphasis on patient centric strategies, ensuring that every decision, every initiative prioritizes the well being and needs of the patients. With that, please join me in welcoming Dr. Viraj on the stage. It's over to you.
Thank you, Ashish, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everybody. And I would like to thank Dr. Sandeep, Dr. Shashank, Ashish, Bharat, everybody for inviting me. This has been an initiative very close to my heart, and I'm very sure that we have now reached year 6, as Dr. Sandhya Kamath mentioned, which means we are now ready to go to schools. I live in the UK, and at the age of 6, most kids will now go to school. So we are now getting into school, and we are becoming more mature as an education initiative. So thank you very much. Will you project the slides from your side?
Right, sir. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that would really be better. And before we start, I want to really say that today when I am talking on this topic with all of you, I stand here as a proud Indian, as an Indian at heart wherever I have lived, as a proud alumnus of St. G.S. Medical College and King Edward VII Memorial Hospital, which for 100 years has been transforming healthcare and providing quality, affordable healthcare to residents not only of Mumbai, but of state of Maharashtra and beyond that, all over India and sometimes even outside India. And I stand here as a proud team member of AstraZeneca, whose focus on innovation, healthcare access, and patient centricity ensures that we bring the best quality medicines and healthcare solutions to individuals, to communities, and to patients all over the world. And over the next few minutes, I will try to share that vision with all of you. On this slide, I have intentionally kept pictures of 4 cities. The city of Mumbai, where I was born. I did my medicine in St. G.S. Medical College and KM Hospital. I learned the basic and fundamentals of medicine. I started working in the pharmaceutical industry. This is a city which gave me my first published paper, my first clinical study, my first job, and everything that in life. And I'm thankful to the city. And then the city of London, which exposed me to the field of pharmaceutical medicine, broadening my understanding of our specialty and what we could do in shores outside India. And then you have the city of Singapore. This was my first out of India job where AstraZeneca provided me with that opportunity. And then the city of Kuala Lumpur, where I became the medical director for Malaysia and Singapore. Each of these cities has contributed to my journey, and I will be sharing some aspects of these in the next few slides. And the message that I want to give all of you is wherever you live, learn from that city, learn from the culture of that city that enriches yourself and that enriches what you want to do in your professional as well as personal life. Can we go next? Medical affairs. Some of us, when we joined medical affairs, it was very different from what it is today. And this is a very nice paper which came up from McKinsey some time back, which talked about what are the core deliverables of medical affairs coming up in the future. And when we talk about improving patient experience and outcomes, what we need to do is to enhance the quality of evidence generation, not only focusing on phase 2 and phase 3 clinical trials, but looking at real world evidence, looking at big data and how we can generate that data. And just to give you an example, Ayushman Bharat is one of the flagship initiatives of Viksit Bharat. And what can we do to ensure that the data collected from millions and millions of Indians is then channelized in the proper way? Because we know that in the future, data is king. How do we accelerate access to treatments? Gone are the days where we used to say that most of the developing world cannot afford innovative medicines. No, the middle class population in India with good amount of insurance is equal to the entire population of the US. But at the same time, it is a responsibility of the pharmaceutical organizations to come together and provide innovative solutions so that access is expanded into various geographies. Many of our innovative medicines, even now, are often restricted to the 9 metros and some geographies beyond that. What can we do? And here I think partnership with the government and government agencies, partnership with other Indian multinational organizations. These are examples wherein access of medicines has expanded beyond the traditional places. How do you personalize medical engagement? And medical affairs will have to lead all of these when you deal with patients, when you deal with patient care groups, communities, and other societies on how we can enhance the patient journey, how we can detect patients earlier. In the last few years, I've been working in oncology. And our vision in AstraZeneca is to eliminate cancer as a cause of death. And you might say that how is it possible? But we are now very close to cure, if I call it that way, in certain cancers. If you look at 5-year survival and 10-year survival, breast cancer, there has been phenomenal advancements in breast cancer. There have been extremely phenomenal advancements in lung cancer. As we diagnose and detect patients early, we provide them with guideline concordant care. We use personalized medicine to identify patients who would likely to be benefited by targeted treatments, and we enhance access to medicines. And this is the patient engagement where medical affairs is actively involved, not only in the implementation, but more so in the strategic considerations and discussions. And while we do that, how do you step up internal medical leadership? And both our leaders in the morning, Dr. Sandeep and Dr. Shashank, talked about how medical is an integral part of business. Most of you might feel, oh my God, medical and business, how they can be related. But it's an important part. And medical is driving the business of the organization to a very great extent. Our insights, our inputs, and our leadership takes the business of the organization in an ethical and compliant way to more number of patients and individuals than ever before. And when we do that, we are improving patient experience and outcomes. Next, please. And what type of leaders are we looking at? Again, a very good article, coming. And I would divide this bubble diagram into probably half and half. The three fundamental types of leaders that we look at is scientific and technological thought leadership. This is baseline. If you don't have it, don't join the industry. You need to have this. And Dr. Sandhya Kamath in her morning inauguration talked about our partnership with clinical departments. This is absolutely critical. If those of you who are still doing your MD, what I want you to do is on Monday morning, contact your clinical department, general medicine, cardiology, and tell them, I want to do a post with you. I want to work in the wards with you. This is very important as pharmacologists or as public health experts, that we have a deep understanding of science and the patient journey. Let me give an example. Our exposure to oncology in our current curriculum is quite minimum. Most of you, after joining the industry, will work in oncology. Within 2 years of joining the industry, this was about 20 years back, I got a chance to work in oncology. I had no idea how this therapy area works. And then I spent some time meeting key opinion leaders and some of our thought leaders in Tata Memorial Hospital and told them, I want to learn. Can I come to your place and can I learn from you? And this is where I got more exposure to how patients of cancer are diagnosed and treated. And that changed my outlook completely. But those opportunities might not be available everywhere. So complete scientific and technological thought leadership. You have to be technological experts as well. Artificial intelligence is not science fiction. We work on artificial intelligence every day in and out, and you should be knowing more about artificial intelligence than ever before. Understanding of compliance, that is a given. That is why you would be employed. You have to check whether things are happening in the right levels of compliance, in line with guidelines, in line with regulations, and in line with clinical practices. And that's your responsibility as a physician. The third absolute baseline, which is necessary for you, is emotional intelligence and communication skills. And communication in written, communication oral, communication in social media. You have to have those communication skills. And communication skills means identifying who is your audience and tailoring your message to your audience. And I'll just give you one small example here. Very early in my career, I was blessed to have worked under leaders who contributed a lot in my own development, and always I've learned from them, and I've learned from the teams of whom I have been an integral part. And I was presenting 2 or 3 years into the industry, I was presenting, and one of my bosses, he was with me, and he said, "What are you presenting?" I said, "I'm presenting on this topic." And he said, "How confident you are?" I said, "Oh well, I presented this 3 or 4 times, so I'm quite confident." And he said, "No, always remember that in the audience, there will be one person who might listen to you only once in his or her lifetime and will make a forever impression about you based on that talk." And maybe there is an audience in these 500 individuals who might listen to me only once. And it is important for you to have those eloquent communication skills targeting to the audience. And then the remaining three bubbles that I'm going to talk about are not entry level bubbles, but they will decide how do you develop in the industry and in professions that you want to go into. And that is learning agility. Are you ready to learn from different therapy areas? Are you ready to learn from different geographies? Are you ready to take over business leadership? Are you ready to move from medical to clinical R&D to access, possibly commercial, to global strategy, finance? And these are areas that we need to work on. And do you have that strategic vision to take your function to the next level? And that strategic vision is internal, but also external. Are you then ready to contribute to the society and to our specialty on how do we take our specialty to the next level? And Pharmasteer, in which we are talking today, is another example of how we are reaching out to more and more residents and helping you to prepare yourself to join the industry. Next, please. In the next few slides, I'll be sharing with you my journey over the last several years. And I'll take some examples. Some of these possibly could be of some help. Joined the industry more than 20 years back. The foundation years are the first 10 years, which I spent predominantly in India, except for a short stint that I had in Korea. And I'll come back to that soon. But the foundation years were that of medical advisor. And a medical advisor in those days used to do everything. We did not have MSLs. Most of you will probably join as MSLs, but we did not have MSL. So we were doing MSL and medical advisor work, strategic as well as operational, speaking in CME meetings, talking to key opinion leaders, developing protocols, writing phase 4 trials. We've written phase 4 protocols. You all have a luxury that you have CROs and you have many others who are writing that. That was not the case 20 years back. We were analyzing the reports ourselves. And somewhere after 4 years of working in oncology, working in cardiology, I got an opportunity to work in clinical R&D, doing clinical trials. It was not with an intention to make a career out of clinical operations, but to understand clinical operations well, so that when you become a medical director, you are well exposed to all aspects of pharmaceutical medicine. And I'm introducing the term pharmaceutical medicine to all of you because this is a specialty that all of us are a part of. And this year, we actually set up the Faculty of Pharmaceutical Medicine India chapter. And I would request all of you to be an integral part of this chapter because that is how our specialty will expand beyond the UK. Then somewhere, I got an opportunity to work in Korea. And my first reaction was when my boss called me and said that there's an opportunity in South Korea. Would you like to go? My first reaction was, is there an opportunity in US or UK? Because we want to just go there. He said, no, you go to Korea. I went to Korea. I lived there for 1 year with my wife. And it was an amazing opportunity. It was an amazing experience that I had because South Korea was just developing the foundations of clinical trials. And I was blessed to be a part of it. And that role in Korea helped me to take further roles, which I will come back later. But this is an important opportunity. So when that opportunity comes, whichever geography it is, take it because it's always a learning. I came back to India after that and I moved to Sanofi, another great organization. We built a Prayas, a very different initiative. In my first roles in Pfizer was oncology, cardiology, traditional pharmaceutical medicine. Here, now I have to set up an MSL team. I need to get into semi-urban, rural India. We wanted to expand healthcare in India, and our team did that. And which are the places that I go to? I go to Darbhanga. I go to places like Sultanpur. I go to places of Eastern UP. I get into Bihar. I get into West Bengal. I get into interior Maharashtra, Andhra Pradesh. Different geographies, different learnings. And Prayas actually became a Harvard Business School case study. So again, learning from different opportunities and from different areas that come to your mind. Next, please. Then I got an opportunity to move outside India. And this was again to manage a completely different therapy area, diabetes, which I had not handled before. And I want to thank my my mentors of that time, who really thought that I could manage diabetes, a therapy area which I had not managed. I'd always managed oncology in the past. So this is when we launched one of AstraZeneca's flagship initiatives, SGLT2 inhibitor. This was an SGLT2 inhibitor, completely different mechanism of action, and we were able to launch this. We created a messaging around Asian diabetes and how Asian diabetes is different, and how patients of Asian diabetes will respond better to SGLT2 inhibitors. While doing that, got an opportunity to work as a medical director for the first time outside India, managing Malaysia, Singapore, and also Korea for some time. And a medical director role is a very important role that I want all of you to be a part of. And I don't want you to miss this role. Vast majority of pharmaceutical physicians retire as medical directors. And this role is absolutely critical to strategic vision of the organization where you are part of the business. Understanding how Malaysia works, how Singapore works was very crucial for me. And then as part of my development journey, got an opportunity to manage emerging markets, which is Latin America, Middle East, Russia, and Asia Pacific for oncology. So it was like coming back into oncology and manage ovarian and breast cancer portfolio. Next, please. As the pandemic struck, there was another opportunity that came up. And that opportunity was to lead the medical team in Middle East and Africa, which meant Turkey, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, and the whole of Africa. And this was a very unique opportunity across all therapy areas and functions. And I took up this responsibility and this challenge, building Middle East and Africa capabilities. We built up strong clinical trial capabilities. We built up access to treatment. We built up oncology functions in many of these countries, and enhancing access, enhancing scientific partnerships that we had with the external world. And somewhere about 2 years back, I got an opportunity to move from medical to commercial. And this is again a part of the development journey where you do medical and then you move into commercial role. It's a business role that I currently do. And I manage a lung cancer franchise for emerging markets. So if you look at this journey, at every 3 years or so, there has been a movement to either a different geography or a different role or a different function. Next, please. If we then, next, please. If we then look at what are the drivers for you and what are the skills for country roles or regional global roles, and I will go to both of these, I think 5 are very crucial. What are your influencing skills? What is the breadth that you are learning? What is the depth that you are learning? How adaptable you are to the new role and to the new function that you are in, and what is your people connect. And for both the country and the regional global roles, let's analyze these 5 aspects and how it makes a difference. So next, please. So regional or global roles, these are more of strategic roles. You manage a therapy area, you manage a brand at a regional level, which might be Asia, Middle East, or Latin America, Asia Pacific, or you could manage it at global level. And always blessed, as I've said, I've always been blessed to be working with some of the best talents. Some of them are still with us, some of them have gone to achieve great accolades in other organizations, but they continue to be a part of an integral team, and I've learned from them at every moment. The influencing skills become very important because people are not reporting to you, but you need to still get things done from them. And this is very, very crucial of indirect influence. And this is what I want you to focus on when you get into the industry. And when you join, you could indirectly influence commercial teams, access teams, and influence them to take decisions. The breadth here is with geography. You are learning from more of the HTA markets, as we call as more developed countries like Korea, Taiwan, Australia, and also from the truly emerging countries where there are multiple access models like Brazil and India and Mexico's of the world. The depth here is the therapy area or the brand. So you are more focused on one therapy area, one indication, or probably groups of indications, and you learn the science more. So in my first regional role, I worked on PARP inhibitors, in ovarian and breast cancer. And this was like remarkable, the work that olaparib has done in BRCA mutated ovarian cancer, possibly with 5-year survival rates, which have never been seen in the past. The adaptability is adapting to different cultures, because the way you will work with a Korea team is different from how you will work with a Brazilian team and how you will work with an Indian team. So that adaptability is important. And the people connect. How do you connect people of different cultures? So these 6 people that you see on the pictures, they did not report to me, but they were part of my core team and I had to get things done from them. So how do you connect to people? How do you understand what their expectations are and then take them to where you want them to do? Next, please. The next type of roles that we are is country medical director roles. And these are like what Dr. Sandeep and Dr. Shashank are doing now. These are leading the organization, leading strategic direction of the organization at the country level. And here your influencing skills are with people who are not medical people, commercial access, HR, finance, and you are a part of the leadership team. And one important thing which I learned from country medical director roles was ability to influence in the boardroom, because you are the only medical person in the boardroom. And you are literally, along with the managing director of the company, you are managing the business of the organization. And that is really very, very crucial. The breadth here comes from the therapy areas, because you are managing multiple therapy areas. While the depth here comes from your understanding of the market, the external environment, the access scenario, who are the players, what is the political urgency, who are the government stakeholders, who are the other non-government stakeholders. This is the depth that you understand. Your adaptability to work, like the picture on the top is when I was managing Malaysia and Singapore. Very different culture. It is Asia, but it is very different from what we have. So adaptability to different cultures. While the picture on what you see is when I was working with Ashish and Bharat some years back on an interim assignment in India. But here again, connecting to people who work in clinical, who work in medical, who work in regulatory, and connecting the dots to drive your vision. So this is really very crucial. And many of you will become country medical directors in the organizations. Next, please. While you do that, it is also important to be visible in the external environment. And over the last few years, I would say that there are 3 areas where I would suggest you should continue your journey on. 1, clinical medicine. You should be known as experts in a clinical therapy area that you are working on. And these are 2 examples here where we worked on Asian diabetes and you are then considered as an expert in that field. And when I moved to oncology, again, developing ovarian cancer treatment patterns and then be regarded as an expert in that therapy area. So clinical medicine is here to stay, and you have to be known as a clinical expert in a therapy. It could be cardiology, it could be anything. Second is pharmaceutical medicine. What are you doing in our specialty outside? Are you publishing enough? Are you talking enough? Are you making your presence enough? And these 2 articles, they are freely downloadable. And if you feel they are of any value, please read it. One was medical affairs post-COVID. What would we do? This was written right amidst the pandemic. And the second thing was our team in AstraZeneca. We talked about 7+ habits of highly effective medical directors and what is necessary. So making yourself more visible is important. And finally, about the societies, how are you active? So very early in my career, thanks to some of my mentors, I got an opportunity to work on the Indian Society for Clinical Research, work in the education committee, work on the evidence committee. So this was very crucial. And then, of course, Faculty of Pharmaceutical Medicine, which is also very important. And currently, I am a part of the Global Forum. Our vision is to expand this beyond the UK and take it to different countries. Next, please. So if I have to talk about what I have been learning on one slide, what have I learned in the foundation years? Undoubtedly, basics of medical function. But along with that, transitioning from an academic background to a professional industry background. Understanding the business language scientifically and listening more. to what is happening around you, but also start becoming more active externally and continue that connection to academics. And my connection with St. Medical College continues even before. So if you have left your college, your university, no, go back, give it back, take back, conduct academic programs, and continue that and learn every time you go to the hospital or the universities. When you move beyond the shores, there's a geographical learning. There's a learning on regulations, on practices, on how patients are treated clinically. But there's also a cultural alignment, which is softer, but more important than what you are learning. And as you do that, make your impact very clear. And at some point, as you get into leadership roles, enterprise leadership, which means can you take a step back and can you look at the entire organization and then say, okay, I'm a part of it, but there are other things and other parts in the organization as well. And you need to help, you need to partner with all of them. How do you move beyond your own comfort zone? I know I can do this very well, but probably there is learning the external environment and change. And always be humble in what you have learned. And finally, how do you bring science into the boardroom? Because you are often the only science expert. And how do you bring the boardroom in medical? It's a mindset change that we need to do in medical affairs as we are driving leadership roles. Next, please. And I think I just have one or two slides now. But and this is probably what has helped me over the last several years. Learning new skills and functions every 18 to 24 months, and possibly in 3 years' time, moving from one area to the other, moving from one function to the other, continuously improving yourself is very crucial and very important. I have been blessed to be in the company of mentors, and I want to really thank Dr. Arun Bhatt sir here. Many of you would know him, and Dr. Amir Sheikh. Dr. Amir Sheikh was my first boss, and Dr. Arun Bhatt sir has been a mentor because they were my masters. And every year I spend about half an hour, about 2 hours with them to understand, because they know me and they can tell me where I'm going wrong and try to bring me back into the track. Focus on what you want to be remembered for. You will achieve many things, but what do people want you to be remembered for? And this is the steering committee meeting for Asian diabetes, which we had in Korea. Pharmasteer that we are talking about, year 6. This is amazing. And this is what you want people to remember you for. Always collaborate. Never compete. We are always in the process of competing with each other. Your competition is yourself yesterday. Are you better than that? If yes, better. If not, yes, there's something for us to look at. And the final point is family comes first, and that's it. Spend good time with family because they are the only ones who are always there for you. Next, please. Finally, I would like to thank wonderful people all over the world without whom I would not have been able to talk to you. And this is on the left corner. This is my first team. I was a medical advisor. You see many leaders here. Maybe you will recognize some of them. Many of them have become medical directors in the organization today. On the right side, you see my Malaysia and Singapore team. Again, gave me that opportunity, accepted me as somebody from other culture to work with them. And then you see my Sanofi team in India. Again, we built up great aspects in Prayas. And then finally my Korea team. So again, different examples and different geographies. Can you click again? Yeah, and then you see my teams in Middle East and Africa, people who really worked, and these are medical directors. Many of them are leaders in that geography, but how we work together to enhance access to medicines and enhance access to healthcare. Next, please. And then sometimes you need to enjoy, and this was a phenomenal team India. And while I was only in an interim role there, but I think we set up great foundations, and team India has moved to great levels. You see many of them have also moved to other roles. So again, this was, I think this was a picture at Pind Baluchi or somewhere near Connaught Place in Delhi, and our meet that we had in Bangalore. So always work with a dream team and be a part of it. Last slide, next. Finally, as I close, I want to leave you with a quote. And these 3 pictures of mine are at Faculty of Pharmaceutical Medicine when I got the membership and the fellowship. The first picture is many years ago. You would recognize that. But this is a very nice quote that I always remember: when the greatest leader, the greatest spiritual master that we have ever known of, Lord Krishna, 5,000 years ago on a battlefield said, We are kept away from our goal, not by obstacles, but by a clear path to a lesser goal. It is our resilience, it is our decision to move away from that lesser goal and to reach that peak of success, to reach that peak of achievement. And when you do that, have complete humility in yourself, because we are not even a small dot in this entire universe. Achieve as much as you can for yourself, for your family, for your community, for your organization, for your country, but be humble in your mind, because humility will distinguish you from others. On that note, thank you very much for your patient hearing. And if there is time, I'm more than happy to answer any questions that come here. Thank you, Ashish.
All right, sir. Thanks a lot, first of all, for being here with us today, and at the same time, for an excellent and amazing talk. And listening to you is always inspiring, sir. And I'm sure it must be motivating for the students as well. And while I look at the questions, we are flooded with them right now. We may not be able to respond each and every question right away. However, let me ensure to audience that yes, I'll personally reach out to Dr. Viraj and would take his opinion and then revert it back to you for sure. While we do have some few seconds in which I would be able to put across a couple of questions to you, Dr. Viraj, if that is fine.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
All right. All right. And my first question to you would be, I mean, there are a lot of questions around, transition at the local level and a global level. So I would want to your comments onto one thing, that how do you map competencies for transitions between local roles, global hubs, and above country responsibilities? Maybe you can
Yeah,
touch base onto
I
that.
think the,
Yeah.
the, the most important part would be your ability to show learning agility. Because let's say that you have worked in India, you don't have any experience in any other country outside India. But if you apply for a role, my suggestion would be, while you are doing a role in India, try to work on projects and initiatives which are cross country, because then you will understand what is happening in other countries. So you are not completely a novice. And when that happens, and when you get into these roles, you will understand, focus on access, focus on how the external environment in those countries is different, and how culturally those countries are different from India. So what needs to change? Some countries are more softer, some countries are more direct. So you need to then address and align yourself when you move to different cultures and different countries.
All right. Thanks a lot, sir. My next question to you would be around leadership, and I know that you touched base onto this particular part during your talk. Which influence skills differentiate high performance in matrix environments? Uh, Maybe if you could quickly share your
I
views
think the
around that,
most
sir. Yeah.
I would say two or three. The most important thing is indirect influence. How you are able to put your point across. But at the same time, are you humble enough to listen to others and be ready to change your approach? If you are headstrong and you do not want to change your approach, that doesn't work when you are working in multi-country organizations. But at the same time, if you have a strong point, do you have a technical background of that point? At the same time, are you able to look at the long-term impact, and how do you take people along with you? These would be very important. So I would say indirect influence and ability to show an impact on whatever you are doing would be the two most important things.
All right, great. Thanks a lot, sir. Thank you so much for being here with us. Thank you so much to the students for amazing questions, and Dr. Viraj for equally amazing answers. Thanks a lot for that, sir.
Thanks. And I'm more than happy if you have a question answer session later,
Absolutely.
Ashish,
I'll
contact
reach
me.
out to you for
More than
that, sir.
happy
Yeah.
to have that. And wish
Yeah.
you all the best. And please spend good time in this Pharmasteer program. Do your exams well, and we'll be very happy to host some of you as interns in AstraZeneca.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
All right. With that, let us now move on to the last but not the least session of the day, which is on safety considerations in clinical trials, Indian regulations. And for that, we have with us Dr. Ratinder Jaj, Professor, Department of Pharmacology, AIMS, Bhopal. Dr. Ratinder is Professor of Pharmacology at AIMS Bhopal with an MD and DM in Clinical Pharmacology from PGI Chandigarh. Her work spans pharmacovigilance, prescription research, antimicrobial stewardship, and bioethics. She coordinates the PVPI Regional Training Center for Madhya Pradesh and Chhattisgarh, serves onto the National Co-Training Panel for Pharmacovigilance and the MP State AEFI Casualty Committee, and strengthens research governance on AIMS Bhopal's Human and Animal Ethics Committees. She is an active member of leading scientific societies including IPS, SOPI, ISOP, SASPI, FERCI, and ACCCP. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Ratindra on stage. Ma'am, over to you.
Very good afternoon or good evening to everybody, and thank you so much, Dr. Ashish. I'm sorry, I think I, removed your screen and put on mine just in the interest of time. Is my screen, am I audible, visible?
Absolutely visible, ma'am. Please go.
Yes, ma'am,
Okay,
please.
great. And so is my screen to slide is fine?
Yes, please.
Yes. Okay, so without wasting any time, and just would like to add that I got to hear a little bit of the tail end of Dr. Virat's talk, and I found it very, inspiring. So great job there, Dr. Viraj. So but I'm going to talk about something very much less interesting, I'm sure, than that. So I'm going to talk about the safety considerations in clinical trials, and I'll be try to limit myself to Indian regulations there. Now, in a clinical trial, safety is obviously always the first priority. Safety here, meaning the safety of the participants in a clinical trial, is always the first priority. And it is also a challenge because we know relatively little about a drug, and especially when it's a new chemical entity. So we know very less about a drug when we are going into a clinical trial with it. And safety, here, a good safety practice is not only important to safeguard the participants in a trial, but a good safety practice would also mean that we have a safer drug on the market if and when it is finally approved. Now, since my talk is about safety in a clinical trial, so I will not be talking obviously about the preclinical phase. And also, I will not be talking about phase 4 because that's the PMS that we are all very much aware of. So I'll be restricting myself to safety during phase 1, 2, and 3. Now, before I go on, so who are the let's, familiarize ourselves with the stakeholders in safety during the clinical trial. So it's not just the participants. Obviously, they are the, most important, I would say, the stakeholders, but it's obviously the sponsors, because it's a safety issue could lead to termination of a trial and loss of a potential drug. The CRO who would maybe doing the trial for a sponsor, the investigator, including, mind you, the investigators institute, the ethics committee who has reviewed the trial, the DSMB, if there is one, that is the data safety monitoring board, will be looking at all of these a little bit more. The regulatory authority naturally is a very important stakeholder, and also all the other healthcare workers and patients who could be potential participants in the trial, and everybody else who could be potential recipients of the drug. So in short, everybody is a stakeholder. So safety in a clinical trial is not something only the participants or the investigators should be worried about. We should all be worried about it, or think about it. Now, coming to the Indian regulations and guidelines regarding safety in a clinical trial, the most important, of course, guideline or the regulation would be our New Drugs and Clinical Trial Act, NDCT 2019, as I would be calling it from now on. We also have a very comprehensive guidance for pharmacovigilance for MH, that is the marketing authorization holders. We have version 2, which came out in 2024. So though this is called a guidance, but this is from a regulator, so this also is actually a regulation. Then we have national ethical guidelines for biomedical research involving participants in 2017. We also have other versions of it. We have guidelines separately for children. These are though they are guidelines, but I think most of us would be aware that NDCT refers to them for biomedical research. That is, if it's biomedical research, if it's a non-regulatory trial, NDCT mentions that we should follow the ICMR guidelines from time to time. So in effect, even these are regulations for us. And then we have the good clinical practice guidelines from CDSO, which again, being the regulator, so these are actually regulations for us. In addition, we have GMP and GLP, which have, is indirectly, of course, guiding our clinical trials, because that's going to guide the data and the drug that has entered a clinical trial. Now, we'll look at the safety considerations and, in a clinical trial from these various aspects or parts of a clinical trial. First of all, of course, the protocol. Now, the protocol will include everything else that I'm going to be talking about. So I'm not going to really go into what should be the safety, component in the protocol. And the protocol is, of course, guided by a GCP as well as NDCT 2019, which mentioned what should be the components of a clinical trial protocol. The protocol is naturally reviewed by an ICMR, so that is a regulation for it. And again, NDCT mentions the functioning and the purview of ethics committee, both for regulatory as well as non-regulatory trials. So we could say they are also involved in ethical review of a clinical trial. And also they both ICMR as well as CDSO have the mandate, have the authority to monitor as well as audit the actual conduct of a clinical trial. So that is also they have oversight over that. Then for the actual pharmacovigilance system and the ADR reporting system, which should be in place for any clinical trial by a marketing authorization holder, is very much detailed in the CDSO pharmacovigilance guidance. We don't have very detailed guidelines or regulations regarding DSMB, that is the Data Safety Monitoring Board, though this is mentioned in GCP. I'll come to it when we come to that part. Medical care and compensation. I think India is one of the countries where very clear guidelines about the medical care as well as compensation for clinical trial participants has been outlined, both in ICMR guidelines as well as in NDCT, right down to the amount of compensation that needs to be given. And finally, we need, safety requires a risk management plan, and this has been outlined in our guidance to the MH. So let's now look at, so this actually involves a lot of, it involves ethics, and it involves ADR reporting, the ADR reporting system, the timelines and everything. So I will basically be touching about a lot of things, but I'm sure a lot of these things would be covered separately. So I may not be going into depth of everything, but I would be free to, I would be happy to answer any questions in the end. So now coming to, as I said, I am going to really, the core is going to be phase 1, 2, 3. And within these also phase 1 is especially important because it is what we call the first in human phase. And this is especially, as I said, important if we are looking at a new chemical entity. So what is the safety consideration in phase 1? Phase 1, of course, we know phase 1, the main idea of the mandate of phase 1 is a safety study. So we want to know if the drug is safe, and we want to do, look at the pharmacokinetics in humans. That is the main objective of phase 1. So before we start phase 1, for a safety overview of a phase 1, we need to look at the data which is available before we start phase 1. And this data is very well, what kind of data is required is outlined in NDCT 2019, which regulates it. So whether this data has come from preclinical or non-clinical studies or in vitro studies from human tissues, or if whether there have been, even phase 0, that is microdosing may have been done. So these could be the sources of this data available to us before we start phase 1. So what are the things that affect safety of a drug? First, it is what is the type of drug, whether it is a conventional small molecule or whether it's a biological or gene therapy, what we call an advanced therapy medicinal product. This, as I'm sure all of you are aware, that biologicals, gene therapies have their own safety considerations that we have to keep in mind. What was the pharmacokinetics of the drug in animal tissues or in animal experiments? or maybe in vitro, have in vitro enzyme induction and inhibition studies have been done. So is it a drug, does it show first order kinetics? Does it have a very long half-life? Is it an enzyme inducer? Is it affected by enzyme induction? That is the another, information that we would want to look at from the kinetics, and all this affects the safety of a drug. Then coming to the dynamics of a drug, what is the mode of action? Is it a novel mechanism? Remember, a novel mechanism again is an added, uncertainty. So when anything that is new, we are uncertain, and that could lead to safety issues, as we'll see in some of the examples. Then does it have a prolonged action? Is it an irreversible, antagonist? What are the potential downstream effects of the target? Is the target something that's involved in a lot of signaling mechanisms, which could lead to more effects than the target effect that we want? And what are the off-target effects? And some of the famous or infamous off-target effects you would know of would be the cytokine release. Does it cause cytokine release? Does it cause QT prolongation? Because we know many of the drugs, maybe not in the clinical trial phase or in after the even marketing, have been withdrawn because of QT prolongation and causing toxicity pointers like estimazole, etc., cisapride, etc. Then what is the dose or exposure and effect relationship? Is there a linear relationship? Is there a clear relationship between dose and effect? So these are the kind of things that you would look at before you start phase 1. And of course, what were the toxicities that did appear, and what was the models that were used during pre-toxicity studies? So this is to start with the information, and why is all that information relevant is what I'm trying to get across to you. Then we come to the drug itself, the drug, its formulation, the quality of the drug. Is it appropriate? Is it adequate? Is there a clear mechanism of synthesizing the drug in adequate quantities for the the quantity of drug that would be required in the clinical trial? And why is that important? Now, this is important so that there are no changes in the quality of the drug as it is synthesized for the clinical trials. What is the route of administration? Is that suitable for the clinical trial that is being conducted? And then we come to one of the most important questions. I could call it $1 million question when we are starting the first in human dose studies, that is phase 1. What is the dose that you start with, which we call the maximum recommended starting dose, MSRD? Now, traditionally, these have been based on what we call the maximum tolerated dose, and our CDSCO and GCP still mention that. But other regulators like EMA and FDA have moved to NOAL, and in fact, EMA has moved to MABEL, and I'm hoping that our audience is aware of that. So, in case not, just very briefly, I'll try to explain. So, maximum tolerated dose is a dose that is can lead to a maximally tolerated adverse effect. That is, there is an adverse effect, but it can be tolerated, while no observed adverse effect level is the level at which no adverse effect is appreciated or observed, which is so naturally NOAL is less than MTD, and even lesser than that is MABEL. That is a minimal anticipated biological effect level. That is the minimum level at which some biological effect is seen. Now, this transition, as I said, first we used to follow MTD, then NOAL used to be the go-to, starting dose, and now, especially since 2006, at least EMA is recommended, especially for drugs which may be high risk and which includes drugs which have an unknown mechanism, what is called MABEL. Okay, and this transition, maybe I hope some of you are aware of the catastrophe which happened in 2006 in a clinical trial where 6 healthy volunteers who received TGN 1412, which was an anti-CD28 monoclonal antibody. In fact, only 6 received the drug and 2 received placebo. So all the 6 had a severe cytokine syndrome and had to be admitted with multiple organ failure. They all recovered, but many of them required amputations of fingers due to gangrene. So, this was a hallmark trial where the dangers of phase 1 and using too high doses was highlighted, and that led to the recommendation of using the minimum anticipated biological effect level. So this is how important the first dose naturally is. Now, after calculating these, usually we also have something called a safety factor, which by default is kept as 10, but this could depend on the disease that we are studying. Say for anti-cancer drugs, maybe you could use a lower safety factor. So safety factor basically is something of, a number by which you would divide the Noel or a Mabel that you have calculated. And as I said, this would depend upon the disease of interest. This would also depend upon how long are you planning to use the drug, which again depends on the disease. So if it's a chronic disease, say hypertension or diabetes, you're going to use the drug for a longer time. So again, safety becomes more important. Then once you have selected the dose, next is the dose escalation. And I'm sure all of you have heard of SAD and MAD, single ascending or multiple ascending doses. Now these have, and I'm sure all of you know that during phase 1, what is recommended is that you give a particular level of dose to only one patient at a time. Observe the patient for a sufficient duration of time, which will depend on both the kinetics and the dynamics of the drug. And then if that patient is fine, then only you go on to the next patient or the next cohort or the first patient in the next cohort. And this is again something that was probably not done in this trial. And in fact, in the interest of time, I will not read through the entire slide, but I've given the reference at the bottom. So this was this is the analysis of the 26 TGA and 1412 trial, where it was observed that the dosing interval between, so besides other anomalies, even the dosing interval between subjects was not long enough. And in fact, here all 6 subjects or participants were given the same dose at the same time, while we should have waited to see whether it was safe. And another, so I'm going to just give actually these 2 examples. Another, so as I said, people became a little more careful after this 2006 catastrophe. But 10 years down the line, there was another such disaster. And this time it happened in France, though the drug was from a manufacturer in Portugal. This was an FAH, inhibitor, probably for a neurological disorder or neuropathic pain, where again there was death of one healthy volunteer and there was serious neurological damage for others. And one of the problems which was cited later was that the increases were too steep and too soon. So we have to be really careful about how we dose a patient during phase 1 and how we increase the doses, and give the same doses to other participants. So that was about how important it is to dose a patient properly. Now, and those were just special considerations for phase 1. Now, again, in the interest of time, I'll consider all the other trials together. That is, now I'm talking about phase 1, 2, 3 all together. What are the other important safety considerations? Study population naturally is a very important safety consideration, whether the benefit risk analysis first of all justifies the use of a particular group of patients or healthy volunteers in case of phase 1. That again, so what this benefit risk analysis, all of you understand, it depends on what the disease is and what are the risks involved in the clinical trial. Could there be possible interactions with the subjects? Smoking, lifestyle could be smoking, alcohol, drugs. Usually in clinical trials, we, try to get patients or participants who are not doing any of these. I mean, we ask them to refrain during a trial, but, this is not always possible. What are the concomitant drugs which a patient is taking? Is that going to, interfere with the drug, the trial drug that you're giving? And this is again a very important consideration. While we are making our inclusion-exclusion criteria, we often exclude drugs with concomitant medications, but we should also remember that many medications like antihypertensives and antidiabetics need to be given together. So it might even be a better idea rather than excluding the drugs, but maybe not at even phase 2, maybe in at least in phase 3, that we include patients on drugs which would, in the real world be taking concomitantly with the trial drug. And special population. So again, this is a topic in itself, so I'm not going to go into that, but this is something that you need to consider when you're doing a trial. Are you going to include patients who are pregnant or breastfeeding women, children, elderly, patients with renal or hepatic impairment, and how are you going to safeguard them? So that is all I would be saying now. So that was about the population. Then what about the study site? So the study site obviously should be one where the functioning as well as the infrastructure can support your clinical trial. That is, if you are doing a clinical trial on cardiovascular trial, you're doing a trial on ischemic heart disease. Do you have the cath lab? Do you have the infrastructure to manage the patient? So obviously that is what you would be looking at. Then the investigators. Investigators obviously need to be those who are qualified enough to do the clinical trial. And then what are the endpoints, the sample size, the analysis? Now, unfortunately, most of this at least during the early clinical trials are based on efficacy endpoints. But where possible, you can include safety endpoints even in phase 2 and 3 trials. Phase 1 obviously is a safety trial, but we don't have statistically, it is not statistically powered to detect safety issues, as we are all aware. Then the monitoring, what is the safety monitoring in clinical trials? Is it adequate? Is it at adequate frequency? Are you, calling the patients or following up the patients at adequate number of times, for adequate duration? And this is where the kinetics are important. And in fact, as a member of an ethics committee, recently we, had a project where a proposal where the investigators were planning to follow up the patients for 1 week while the half-life of the drug was 5 days. So we recommended, no, for a 5-day half-life, you should at least monitor for 3 weeks, at least for 5 half-lives, or maybe between 4 and 5 half-lives. So is the monitoring long enough? Are they looking at, the relevant lab investigations? Suppose there was a risk for, liver, maybe hepatotoxicity. Are you looking at hepatotoxicity? Though hepatotoxicity would be a really red flag. Now, what I mean by red flag, there are two things, two organ systems that are considered red flags for safety in clinical trials. That is the CVS, and we all know HRG, channel inhibitors, which cause increased QT prolongation, or hepatotoxicity in a clinical trial is taken as serious safety concerns. And also there are certain adverse events like SJS, Stevens-Johnson syndrome, TEN, agranulocytosis, which are considered red flags during a clinical trial. They could even, lead to termination of a trial or abandonment of a drug, depending again on what the drug was being developed for. Then drug-drug interaction. So I've already, I think, mentioned, so I won't spend more time on that. Then, so besides this so you are monitoring adequately, but what happens if you do find especially a serious adverse event? Does your protocol have an unblinding system if this was a blind? So is there a protocol who has the code and who can unblind in such a manner that the rest of the trial is not compromised? So is that in place? Do you have the infrastructure, the medicines, and the expertise required to treat a patient if an adverse effect happened? So that was another, problem with the 2006 CD28 trial, that they could not manage when the patients had 6 patients together had a cytokine storm. So would you have the facilities to manage any untoward event? Then, as I mentioned, clinical trials are required, especially, where a new drug is being studied, maybe a new clinical entity, where multi-center trials. Ideally, of course, all clinical trials should have a data and safety monitoring board, DSMB, also called it just a data monitoring committee or safety monitoring committee or an independent data monitoring committee. So this does, as I said, does find a mention in our GCP, the recent GCP 2024, where it says, so this slide is a little busy because I have copy pasted the, what it says. So DSMB is a group of individuals with pertinent expertise that reviews on a regular basis, accumulating data from one or more ongoing clinical studies or research. So usually a DSMB is study specific or maybe one or more related studies. And this advises the sponsor regarding, continuity of the trial, whether it is safe to continue the trial for the trial participants and future participants, and also whether it is worthwhile in terms of efficacy to continue the trial or not. So this is what a DSMB does. So it is, though it is appointed by the sponsor, but it is supposed to be functioning independently. Members typically include clinical trial experts, relevant specialists, depending on what field the trial is in, a biostatistician, biomedical ethicists, and basic scientists, pharmacologist, and a legal expert should be there. Then another requisite for a safety, in clinical trials is stopping rules. Again, our regulations do not elaborate the stopping rules as such in detail, but they do find a mention in CDSCO GCP 2024, where it says, so that I put that right at the bottom because only this line is from GCP, where it says all clinical trial protocols should clearly define study objectives and other things, and they should include stopping rules, especially for high-risk products. So what are these stopping rules? So you basically decide when you would stop. So of course, we know there is an interim, many trials have interim analysis, and we stop maybe because one drug has been shown to be, good and we don't need to continue, or it has been shown to be futile and we can discontinue because of that. But besides efficacy, stopping rules can be for safety reasons, should be in fact for safety reasons. And these stopping rules may, refer to final stopping to the dosing and finally terminating the drug. They may be for stopping rules when you would decide, okay, this participant should no longer be continued in the trial, or maybe you stop dose escalation. So your stopping rule may be different for each of these above. And in case of a healthy volunteer, stopping rules, and this is, I think, from the EMA guideline, it says if there is one serious adverse event in even in one subject, then it should be stopped. But if there are non-serious severe adverse events, then if they are in two subjects, the trial may need to be stopped. And these two adverse events may not be the same adverse event. They may even be from different organ systems. But if there are two, then you may need to stop the trial. Then another thing, aspect that is required is a risk management plan or risk minimization strategy, and health regulators are giving a lot of stress on these. And this does find a definition and elaboration in CDSCO PI guidance to MAH also. So according to CDSO, this is a standalone document which should be updated throughout the life cycle. So it's not something that you just submit to CDSU and you forget about it. You the image or the marketing authorization holders are supposed to update it throughout the life cycle of a drug, and this should include the risk and safety profile of a drug on a continuous basis. So whenever any new information becomes available, this should be part of the risk management plan. That is, what are you going to do about, how are you going to reduce the risk in view of any new information which is affecting the safety of a drug? It could be just as simple as recommending some pre-medication, or recommending slower infusion in case of a drug, or recommending genotyping, or label changes, or it might even be, as serious as stopping marketing of a drug. Then now coming to the actual reporting. So as I said, I'm not going to spend too much time on this. I think everybody is aware of how we report and where we report our pharmacovigilance system. So this is defined and elaborated in detail by PVPI that all MAH need to have an pharmacovigilance system in place. And this includes all drugs, biologicals, radiopharmaceuticals, phytopharmaceuticals. But for vaccines, we have a different guidance for biologicals, as well as we have the AEFI, that is adverse effects following immunization guidelines. So I will not spend time on it because I can see the time is ticking. And this is how CDSO works in collaboration with MAH. And I'm sure this would be covered somewhere, reporting of SAEs during clinical trials. But since I am talking about clinical trials, just very quickly, I think would tell you that any serious adverse event during a clinical trial needs to be reported within 24 hours by an investigator to the sponsor and to CDSO if it's a regulatory trial, as well as to the institutional ethics committee. And within 14 days, a final report needs to be given by the sponsor and the investigator to the ethics committee, as well as the CDSO, as well as the head of the institute where the trial was being done. And then subsequently things happened, which I'm going to skip because of restricted time. Then besides these individual case safety reports, individual areas, the MAH also have to give periodic safety updates, or that is the PSURs or the DSURs. So the PSURs are actually for marketed drugs, while the DSURs are for the drug during a clinical trial. So they are the development safety update reports that have to be given to the regulators. Medical care. So this is again a totally different, separate topic in itself, but just I'm letting you know that all these are also as I said in the beginning, India has very good, very clear regulations on them. It is mentioned in GCP and it is, very well outlined in NDCT. And as I mentioned, even for this medical care and compensation, for academic trials, NDCT is very clear that the investigators have to follow what is advised by ICMR. And for regulatory trials, we have the 7th schedule. Now we have so I have been talking about safety, reporting. But with all this reporting, what is important is assessment, risk assessment, as well as communication. So I have combined the two. They are actually two, different tasks. So there has to be somebody out there who's assessing the risk with all this information. It is both the sponsor as well as the regulatory authorities, because regulatory authorities are in a position where they're getting this information from different MAH, different sponsors. So they do look at it. They do, in fact, signal review, and somebody has to take a call. Is it serious? Is it serious unexpected, what we call a SUSAR? And somebody has to inform all stakeholders. And in case of a multi-center trial, it is the responsibility, of course, of the sponsor to let if there is something wrong at one site, to let all sites know, so that any protocol change, or maybe even if it's a termination of the trial, all sites can have to be informed very fast and in a timely manner. So communication is key to safety, as I think we always keep saying. And then, just towards the end, one parting thought. I wish I had a live audience here. What do you think? Does a lack of efficacy in a clinical trial need to go into a PSUR? So I hope the answer is yes from you. In the interest of time, I can't wait to look at the answers in the chat. So yes, even lack of efficacy is a serious issue, and this is clearly mentioned in our guidance, because especially in a serious condition, if there is a lack of efficacy, that could be life-threatening for the patients. So that's mentioned there. And so to conclude, safety evaluation is central to all stages of a drug's life cycle. Safety observations made during clinical trials can help us to be safe when the drug does reach the market. And the regulatory landscape has evolved a lot over the last few years. It's not just about reporting, it's about risk minimization, and all companies are required to have risk minimization strategies in place. And though there is already a lot of harmonization across the globe, but a little more further harmonization could help in safety surveillance during clinical trials. Since I'm, restricting to Indian regulations, I'm not really going into comparisons there. And these are my key references. They are the first 4 are nothing but the guidelines that I have been, quoting from. In addition, this EMA guideline would, I would highly recommend. And The last is a very interesting article. And I would highly recommend all of you to go into this article by Yusuf. So thank you with that. And I would just like to say research is inherently uncertain. That is why we are doing research. Unintended harm is an unfortunately inevitable part of the research enterprise. But we cannot, make it go away altogether. All we can do is try to minimize it so that there is, as little harm as possible, not only to the current, but to the future participants and the future recipients of the drug, which could be any of us. So thank you. With that, I'm sorry if I think, taken 5 minutes extra, though I think I started a little late. But yeah, thank you. And I would be happy to answer questions if you have time for that.
Thanks a lot, Mom. First of all, for being with us today and for an elaborate as well as excellent talk for the benefit of students. Thank you so much for that. I know we are a bit stressed on time, but I do have one question and would request if you could respond it. So the question is, how is causality for trial-related injury determined, and how is compensation calculated and adjudicated under Indian rules?
Okay. Yeah, so that's a good question in the sense that many of us are involved in causality as such in PMS. The causality in trials and otherwise is quite different. In trials, the main crux of causality is it related to clinical trials or is it not related? That is, what we do. Compensation, as I said, is given. So if it is related, now both ICMR and NDCT say whether or not it is related, first thing is you take care of the patient. And till it can be found that it is not related to the patient, to the trial, the management has to be given free. Once it is found to be related, so anyway, so management has to be done whether it is related or not, and if it is related, it has to be free. If it is unrelated, you can charge for the management. Then coming to the compensation, now compensation is elaborated in Schedule 7 of NDCT. So there is a formula. So there is a different formula which is based on the workman's formula. So there's a different formula for death. There's a different formula for serious injury and for congenital anomalies. So I would, recommend that you just have a look at that. So the formula basically relies on the age of the patient, the pre-existing, condition of the patient, and then there is a factor that you divide it for. So depending on it, the amount received or which has to be given in case of a death can vary anywhere from 4 lakhs to 72 lakh, or let me say 2 lakhs to 72 lakh, because if the patient has high chance of mortality within the next, I think, 6 months, then you have to give only 2 lakhs. But otherwise, if you calculate, it comes from 4 lakhs to 72 lakhs. So all the formula are given very elaborately in NDCT 7th rule. That is where I would refer you to look at these formulas for compensations. And the relatedness, as I said, the relatedness, so when is decided and investigated by the investigators and the sponsors themselves by a DSMB. And these reports are, but you can understand that these are not going to be, especially the investigator is not going to be an impartial, assessor. So these reports are then sent, as I said, initial report within 24 hours, and the final report has to be sent within 14 hours to an ethics committee at CDSO in case of a regulatory trial. And then it's the ethics committee finally actually who, assesses and takes a final call about the relatedness. And the ethics committee also has the mandate to decide yes, compensation has to be given, and the amount of compensation, though it does have this formulas to fall back on, but it is the ethics committee which decides the compensation. And in case of death, actually CDSU usually forms another committee, an expert committee, which looks into death. But all other serious adverse events are adjudicated by the ethics committee. The relatedness as well as the amount of compensation that should be given is decided by the ethics committee. So I hope I have made that clear. Sorry, I cannot hear you, Ashish, suddenly. I hope I was audible all this time.
Am
Yes,
I
yes,
audible,
now I
ma'am?
can hear you. Yes, yes, yes.
Perfect. Thanks a lot, ma'am. I was just thanking you for that excellent talk, and I'm sure that this must have benefited our students a lot. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
So, guys, as we conclude day one of Pharmasteer, a sincere thank you to all our dignitaries who graced us for the inauguration. Their presence actually set the tone for the day, and we are also equally grateful to all our speakers for their clear evidence-driven insights, and to all the participants for thoughtful engagement and the questions that came across today. So today actually underscored that science, ethics, and execution must move together to create real patient impact. So stay tuned for day two, since we already have some great topics of the interest, which is scheduled on 21st of Feb 2026. Looking forward to see you all on 21st of Feb 26. Feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn as well for any questions, any feedback in case you may have. Thank you so much.